Oh, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you find this one. No, you hadn't heard from me in a few weeks, and I apologize for that. Ran into some technical difficulties with the video that was supposed to be released on the regular schedule, and it was recorded, but when I was doing the upload and all of that, it would not transfer the audio for some reason. And that's not even a video I'm redoing tonight. I thought I had actually saved it because I've always send it to myself and put it in a folder, but apparently I deleted it too. So that's not even a video I'm gonna do today. This is an entirely different one. So I'll get that other one to you at some point. I'll have to re-record it. But I just want to talk a little bit about us as a people. I'm not putting us down and talk about some things that, you know, we see going on right now. I'm gonna talk about some things that have happened in the past historically. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about what we can do to improve, in my opinion. And I believe we can do better. And we're going to have to do better if we want to be better and have better. I mean, look at us as a people. Before the civil rights legislation was signed by LBJ, our homes had both parents in them in over 80% of the cases. 80%. Our economic uplift was happening at a much faster rate before the act was signed. And afterwards, it actually slowed down substantially. And that's because we thought we had arrived. We thought the government had helped us arrive. We stopped focusing on improving our economic advancement because the government actually told our black misleadership that things would be improved toward blacks from the government. Well, at least that's what the black misleadership told us. Because the government actually told black misleadership that things would be improved toward certain blacks from the government. Because the Democratic Party, which was the ones championing everything at the time, like they were really our saviors, and we believed that, and right today we still believe that for some strange reason. They told the misleaders, the misleadership, the black misleadership, that they would give concessions to certain blacks so they could actually manage the rest of black America for the system. Now, you don't have to believe anything I say. Go and do your own research. I mean, you're going to have to do some research, but you can go and find guys who got caught in those circles and thinking they were heading up to that national convention in '64, thinking they were going to go up there for the benefit of blacks. And then when he found out him and his other grassroots blacks went up there, that's what they were told. And say there's no place for the grassroots blacks up here, grassroots blacks up here within our party. The only people we want in our party is the certain ones. And so, like I said, don't take my word for nothing. And so, look at our family units today. Look at our economic advancement pace today. Look at our voting habit and pattern today. Look at how little political representation we have today. Yeah, we got a piece of paper. We got a 10% set aside program that actually for everybody in this country except the white male. So that program didn't even benefit us. I mean, look at all the legislation that Joe Biden is passing for every other ethnic group out there. Only piece of legislation Joe Biden gave black people is the 1994 crime bill. Don't check my word for it. Take my word for it. Go check it out for yourself. So they told us we were going to get 10% of government contracts, and then they made everybody in the United States a minority in one form or another, except for the white male who kept 90%. So every other ethnic group, every Everybody else in this country has to compete for 10%, including the white female, because by her being a female, she's considered a minority. And if her husband owns a business, he uses her and puts the business in her name so he can get the contracts that he's lost out on. Don't take my word for nothing. Check it for yourself. But we got a whole boatload of black politicians, and we've lost ground in home ownership. We've lost ground at the voting booth. We've lost ground in the economic game. And do I even need to talk about the family unit or the lack of it thereof? I mean, like I said, don't listen to me talk about nothing. Do your own research. One of the people that I like to study from at the turn of the 20th century, during the Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois time, William Monroe Trotter, there was a guy named Kelly Miller. He was the dean at Howard University. I mean, I got some issues with Kelly Miller. I got some issues with Booker T. Washington. I got a lot of issues with Trotter and Du Bois. But Kelly Miller said this. Let me pull up what Kelly Miller said. I got a couple of things he said. Kelly Miller said, the Negro must not be allowed to make the same mistake in the new Reconstruction era that he was permitted to make in the old. All of his energies were focused upon the issue of political rights and privileges, with little or no reserved power for economic and industrial advancement. Now, we're not in the industrial age anymore, we're in the information age, but we're still running last place in that too. And so we're still doing the same thing that Kelly Miller warned us against over 100 years ago, because I believe that was in 1908. And so we've passed 2008, so we're in 2021, almost 2022, so 114 years almost. And we're still doing the same thing 114 years later that we were doing back then. See, we're focusing too much of our energy at the political stump, in my opinion, which is very honest and 100% right on that. We're focusing too much energy on the political stump. Every time something doesn't go our way, we keep saying we need to vote better. We need to vote harder. You can't vote better when you keep voting for the same party you've been voting for the past almost 60 years. You know, I know a lot of you say, and every time I've told a black person that vote for Democrats, oh, what you saying, vote for the Republican Party? Do you realize there's more than two parties in this country? You can go libertarian. You can go constitutionalist. You can go communist. You can go Marxist. You can go socialist. Now, I'm not advocating for any of those. If you're going to go in, you can go American Freedom Party. I mean, it's a lot of parties out there that a lot more aligned with our thought process as a people than the Democratic Party. Democrats don't mean us no good. Look at their track record. I don't know what it's going to take for us to wake up there. You can't vote better when you keep voting for the same party. We think by organizing voter drives, registration drives, instead of business building seminars, things are going to get better. Nope. Have you realized that the voting pattern we have been following hasn't been working, and it's still not working? Why do you think getting more black people out to the voting booth is going to work for us? Look, who's the representative where you live? What party do they belong to? What is improved in your neighborhood if it is predominantly black? More than likely, you have a black political manager for your city council representative, and you have a black political manager for Congress. And if you got a state senator, more than likely, you have a black political manager for the state senate. Don't take my word for nothing. Check it for yourself. You don't need to check it because you know who you're going to the voting booth punching a ballot for. Kelly Miller also said this: a corrupt fountain cannot send forth a pure stream. Now, look at our black politicians all over this country. They are just as corrupt as the white ones. Look at a lot of our pastors. I'm not going to say all. Look at a lot of our pastors. A lot of them are corrupt too. Hey, it is what it is. But how can we talk about white America and what they do, and we're displaying some of the same behaviors that they are? To make it even worse, we're displaying those behaviors toward each other. Kelly Miller also said, and can you tell I'm liking Kelly Miller today? Yeah, like I said, I read his book. He's got a couple of them. And what did quote from Kelly Miller? I forgot the book. Miller said the American Negro has acquired the European's consciousness. Now, I think in the book of Proverbs, verse 3 and 31, it says to not envy your oppressor and don't choose his ways. Now, some folks have actually told me, as I stated, that I talk about our problems too much and don't offer solutions. Well, that's where they lie. Because I've talked about economic advancement when I've said to study business ownership, investing, and building business networks. I've talked about how to rebuild a family, neighborhood, and communities by getting married first and not producing illegitimate children all over the place. I've talked about how to best position ourselves at the political stump. I mentioned that earlier. And as I continue to work on repairing my health, I've offered advice to others on how I did things to get myself better. I'm still not there, but I'm still working. And I make sure to tell each person to do their own homework because I'm not a doctor. And I'm not going to ever tell anyone what they should do for their physical well being. I've talked about how to get our spiritual and mental well being together. So I've offered solutions. If you've been paying attention in any of the past videos I've done, the problem is we don't want to do any of them as a whole. You can't be shacking up and trying to set a proper example for your children. You can't be spending money recklessly and teaching your children or telling your children how to save and invest. You can't be producing children all over the place and creating multiple fractured homes if we want to see stronger relationships. We want to see stronger family bonds. We want to see stronger neighborhoods. We want to see stronger communities. You can't do that because in order to do that, our communities, our homes, our neighborhoods need men, not males, men. See, we got a whole lot of guys out there that look like men in appearance, but they ain't men. They're males. So we got to set the proper example. You can't be producing children all over the place and creating multiple fractured homes. Women, you can't just keep giving your womb to different men unprotected and think you're setting a good example for your daughters and sons. It shows your daughter that she doesn't have to allow a man to properly love her as a woman. It shows your son they don't have to play a part in the upbringing of whatever children they produce. Because you allowed the men you laying with to get away with it. So it shows a bad example for both sides of the sex. Because it's only two, male or female. He created them. Our men need to grow a backbone and stand up and fight for their women and children and stop allowing the government to be an absentee father to what they created. Having illegitimate children all over the place is not asserting yourself as a man. It shows that your self-esteem is very low and you think you're doing something wrong running all over the place from bed to bed, producing children that you have no intent on taking care of. It's like one of the guys I went to college with, All-American point guard. And he and I would have lunch a lot of morning because the athletes had a different cafeteria than the regular student body. And, they had a clinic on campus and, he talking about he liked the real feel. I say, well, I ain't gonna tell you his name, but I said, man, ain't gonna be no real feel if you catch something you can't get a shot for. Because he always liked to tell me I just go to the clinic and get a shot if I catch something. And I told him, I said, man, you better stop that. But it's a low self-esteem issue. It's a low self-worth issue. It's a poor self-image issue. We need to be examples in our homes and neighborhoods. We're examples by showing, not by talking. The education of our children should be a top priority for both parents. One of the best ways to do that is have some personal development books yourself. Set aside about 30 minutes a day where you, your spouse, and your children read in a book of choice. As your children get older, you have to incentivize them. You start picking out books for them to read, when they're young. And you tell them, encourage them to read. Don't just bring no garbage in your house. Don't bring no books in your house, about witchcraft and demons and all that stuff. And, and now I'm seeing where a lot of these school districts have same sex books for children in elementary school and transitional books for children in elementary school and bringing in queens for children in elementary school. Don't allow your children to fill their heads with that garbage. Yeah, encourage them to read, but get them some decent stuff to read. So you start picking out books for them to read and tell them based on the size of the book, you'll pay them an amount after they write a one-page report. This is one of the best investments you can make into your children. After a while, if you do it right, they will voluntarily read for the incentive, not realizing how much they're learning in the process. We had our grandson with us for a few years, and I bought him books, and I would ask him. I didn't ask him to write a report, but I would ask him, "Tell me what you read in that chapter today." I said, "Just read one chapter." And I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't giving him no children's books. The first book I handed him was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I told him, I said, "I want you to read a chapter today." I said, "Every day I'm going to come ask you what you got out of that chapter." I gave him another book, and he's working out of state right now. And he called me a couple of days ago, and I was talking to him about dating young ladies. I mean, smoke, do what you want to do. But I was telling him about dating a young lady my first year in college that smoked. And he bust out laughing. He said, "Yeah, I remember you gave me a book years ago. And, one of the early things on in the book, the guy was talking about, dating and kissing a girl who smokes is like licking an ashtray." And so he remembered from a book I bought and gave him. So they're going to learn, not even realizing it. But you can't just tell them they need to read and all you do is watch TV and play video games. You and your wife should be reading books to learn how to better communicate and love one another. There's no cookie cutter approach to dealing with people, even in relationships. You know, if everything worked in our past relationships, we wouldn't have past relationships. With everything going on today, as a parent, you need to be in your children's face on a regular basis. And I'm not talking about in a dictatorial way. I'm not talking about being a hard-nosed dictator or tyrant or anything like that. You have to do it in a loving way. The world is winning with our children. And one of the best books that helped me learn how to deal with that stuff was a book by Aubrey Adlin called Man of Steel and Velvet. You had to know when to be tough. You had to know when you need to be soft. Now, I was involved in sports. Sports are a great way to keep any of our children out of trouble. And I played sports. My sisters ran track. I played football. I ran track for a while. When I was at the University of Houston, I played intramural basketball because you can't, whatever sports you play, varsity sports you play in college, you can't play that sport. Like the football players couldn't play flag football and the basketball players couldn't play the intramural basketball. So I played on intramural basketball team at U of H, and we pretty good team. And so, although me and my sisters were athletes, we were all exceptional students academically. We, as a people, have grown into the sports fixation so much as I would take it out of the ghetto. Well, over half of the athletes that go professional broke within 5 years after their last playing day. Now, I'm not putting it down, but you got to learn how to manage. Average sports career lasts around 4 to 5 years. And what are our youth going to do with themselves when those days are over? We're so fixated on sports as a people that it has actually become a racial trait, not just to us, but even others on the outside looking in. There's no such thing as a natural athlete. I don't care what nobody tells you. There is, however, something called an athlete who works hard when people are not looking so he can be a natural. That's why when we see a black person of any size or height, we think they should be an athlete. When I was in high school, I was the smallest player on the defensive line, weighing in at only 180 pounds and 6 feet 2 inches, but the coach had lied to the press and told him I was over 200 pounds. 180. And that was on during the heavy part of the season because we're coming in from the summer when we got weighed. There were plenty of guys in high school who were taller and bigger than me, but they didn't play football. However, I was lifting weights 3 to 4 nights a week once I got off work, and then once the nights I didn't lift weights, I would get off work and I would run from my parents' house to the freeway and back several times a week because during the summer I was working 5, 6 days a week. I was getting a whole lot of overtime. Back then I was making $3.50 an hour. So you know I was working like a slave. My biggest check was $390 after taxes. So you figure that math out and see how many hours I worked in a 2 week period. That was my biggest check during the summer. You couldn't tell me nothing. I was balling. But even when I got off work, and I was getting off work at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. Now things are a little different now. I wouldn't recommend an athlete do something like that, run 2 miles, round trip from his parents' house and back. It's just too much going on now. But that's what I was doing when nobody was looking. And after I would get back after running, I would go on the back patio and I would do jumping jacks, jump rope, and things like that. Because I knew I wasn't strong enough to sit there and wrestle with those offensive linemen that were much bigger than me. So I had to be stronger. I had to be quicker. So, and we also have to get out of the mindset that being smart is acting white. One of my sisters actually bought me a book titled He Talked Like a White Boy, and that was written by Joseph Phillips. Joseph Phillips played in, a pretty substantial role on the Cosby Show and, several other television shows as well. Some of you have heard the name Frances Cress Wilson, and she said something too as well that I think made sense. Black children should be taught to place academic achievement as the highest priority. Black children should be taught to read and write the oppressor's language well before learning to sing and dance. All black children must learn that it is knowledge and information that are the important basis of power along with self-respect. And I mean, that's so true. How are you going to communicate if you don't know? You don't understand. It's kind of like not knowing Spanish now with the influx of Spanish-speaking people coming to this country. Some of you are familiar with the guy, movie producer John Singleton. He's passed on now, but my first awareness of John Singleton was when the movie Boys in the Hood came out with Ice Cube and Cuba Gooding Jr. But he said this before the year 2000. He said, enough of basketball. Our children need assets. Our children need assets. Assets. See, we've been conditioned to create expenses. But our children need assets like technology that will lead us into the next century. And they need to learn it. It's cool to learn this technology. And I mean, think about this. Like I talked about sports. As blacks in this country, we represent under 5% of the lawyers, around 6% of the doctors, 4% of engineers in this country are black. And I mean, you take a school like Prairie View that years ago, they used every company that was looking for engineers in the United States was going to Prairie View to look for those engineers. Every country that was going to look for doctors, I think they were going, was it Loyola? I think Loyola in Louisiana. And I think they were looking for the lawyers out of Howard. And despite all the lawyers that's in this country, our percentage is still minute. We have less than 2% of black architects and not even 1% of CEOs. And so why are we not encouraging our children to pursue these type of careers? Why are we not educating or encouraging our children to pursue entrepreneurial type endeavors? But that's a real sad testament to what we're teaching in our culture. Because, like I stated before, most of the people that I dealt with in every hospital visit was either from South Africa, Philippines, or India. One black American doctor, several whites, but most of my medical team in 4 different hospital visits, all from another country. Now, as far as the CEOs are concerned, we've only had, I think, a total of 16 in this country since they created the Fortune 500. And I don't care what you say, that's a racial issue. It's got a lot of racial dynamics to it. And I don't care who you are, you're not going to change my mind one way or another because I've studied it. But as far as the other careers are concerned, that's a sad testament to where our focus has been as a people. Now, many of you also know I also talked about Marcus Garvey a lot. And Marcus Garvey said something as well. Let me pull that up. Marcus Garvey said this: the greatest enemies of the Negro race are among those who hypocritically profess love and fellowship for him, when, in truth and deep down in their hearts, they despise and hate him. Now, if you go back and listen to some of my other videos, and I think I have over 100 videos on this site now, I don't know how many it is now. I produced the first video on this site, I think somewhere around 2014. That was the Free Blacks Go on Slave video. But I tell you who some of those black people are, back then and today. The reason we think the ones who speak or call themselves representing us are for us is because white America put them in front of us and told us this who speaks for us. Think about it. We don't elect any black leadership at any time in history. We haven't elected any black leadership at any time in our history in this country. We've had blacks that spoke up and we consider them leaders. But it's amazing that the ones who, and you can check, do your own research, the ones who've always talked about self-help, self-improvement, entrepreneurship, business ownership, empowerment, economic empowerment. Every one of those blacks who've talked about that, something's happened to them or they were minimized. That's amazing. But the ones who keep telling us we're victims, it's black versus white, it's Republican versus Democrat, it's fat versus skinny, it's tall versus short. Those are the ones that keep calling themselves speaking for us. I mean, we got one right now. He's a straight up hustler. You know, every time an incident going, there he is in the news. But hey, getting fat economically off of other blacks' misery. But white America told us who our spokespeople are. White America appointed them as our managers because those blacks truly are the epitome of a house Negro. Why do you think you never see a black person like Judge Joe Brown speaking publicly? Joe Brown won't play the game with him. Most all of your black leaders come out of one of the black fraternal organizations or another. They catch them once they get to college. And some of them don't even have to go to college. Check the schools of your so-called black leadership. Almost every last one of them attended a university that was predominantly white at some point in their academic career. Now, am I putting that down? Not at all. I'm just telling you to pay attention a little more. You know, like I said, I went to University of Houston, and you know, it wasn't because University of Houston was predominantly white. University of Houston had a chemical engineering program that was pretty good, and I didn't have money to leave the city. That's why I ended up at the University of Houston. I really wanted to go to Prairie View. I wanted to play football there too, but at the time they had canceled the football program over there, and I didn't have any money to go stay on campus. My parents didn't have money to afford to send me to stay on campus. I was accepted to Baylor University for my academics only. Many of you know Baylor University is a private university, and I definitely didn't have money to go to Waco and stay or live, you know, depending on how you look at it. So I'm just telling you, you know, pay a little bit more attention. You know, for those guys like that, you can just call them black-faced white supremacy. You know, we can do better as a people. We have to do better as a people. We must do better as a people. That's the only way we're going to get better as a people. Talk to you later.